the subject is energy. We've talked about the seven centers as transformers that somehow step down the voltage. With human psychosexual or psychosomatic energy, what is the voltage? Voltage is a force. It's will. Will is that force in the universe that brings about cultural renewal through the transformation of energy. Under this paradigm, you can think of any kind of cultural renewal. It could be a new recipe that ends up producing a new dish and then being marketed. It could be a new fashion line. It might be a new resolution of the UN Security Council. It might be the blueprints of an invention. It might be a musical composition that never existed before. All of these things are examples of renewal of the culture. And the culture gets renewed through the transmutation of energy. Energy changes from one form into another form. So the forms that are holding they have an expiry date for a limited period of time. The old fashion exists, but then there can be a withdrawal of energy from there and an input of energy behind a new blueprint, behind a new idea. And that's what I mean by transmutation. We can follow this process if we're keen students of cultural change and renewal. And there is will as the prime mover, and it's our aspiration to align with the will of the universe that moves the stars and causes the flowers to open and brings about what happens in the human sphere as well. There's also power and energy. If you've got a solar system installed on your roof, there's a kilowatts reading and then there's a kilowatt hours. One's a power reading, one's an energy reading. For us, in the human sphere, I think it is instructive to understand power as that will, as it starts to move and is owned by some consciousness, then it is shared in a common purpose. And that going from the owning to the sharing of a common purpose is the movement of power. That is charismatic. The movement of power is charisma, in the original sense. Will gets discerned through our own wisdom, and then it's shared in a common purpose. It mobilizes others. And it's understood by the many in terms of blueprints for cultural renewal. And this is how the energy comes through. Now, we feel an ebb and flow of energy at different levels of our being. We feel physical energy. We need physical energy. to do what we do every day, just to get out of bed and move. And sometimes the energy is there and we have vitality. We say, I feel a lot of vitality. And sometimes the energy isn't there and we feel depleted, as though we've been sucked dry of our energy and we can barely move around. So this is the ebb and flow, because waves ebb and flow. This is the ebb and flow of energy in the physical. We need to replenish the physical, and the cells need to repair and restore themselves. And we need the right nutrition and the right rest.
The rest.
Yeah. The rest is important.
Very important.
But be aware of the ebbing and flow of that energy. And then you can take that awareness of the pattern of ebb and flow and watch for it on other levels. And in order to be aware of it on other levels, other centers have to be activated under this paradigm. Another thing that we feel the sexual energy that relates to the sex center, the second center up from the base, the waxing and the waning, the ebbing and the flowing. And women with their menstrual period, they feel that energy moving in waves during the month, depending upon where they are in their menstrual cycle, where they are in relation to ovulation, and so on. Like the waxing and waning moon, the energy ebbs and flows. From that orange to the symbolically yellow solar plexus center.
Fire in the belly.
The belly, yes. And here, this is a center of
creativity,
personal desire and personal power and control. We all desire a certain amount of control over our lives. And when we are frustrated in achieving that control, this center here can be disturbed and it can manifest problems in this area to do with the gut, the abdominal area, and so on. Become aware of how the ebb and flow of energy through this center affects us. Because sometimes we feel we're powerful, we're in control. And at other times, there's an ebb and we feel powerless, victimized, at the mercy of everything and everyone. And if somebody asks us to do something bold at that moment, get up in front of a group of people or attempt something, we feel completely disempowered and disinclined to manifest our personality. So there's an energy that flows there and ebbs from there as well. And the energy flowing into and out of the heart helps us to know what belongs to us, with whom we're in relationship. As I say, it's that non-polarized consciousness that comes when that energy flows through this receiver. What do I mean by non-polarized? Well, the polarized consciousness is a win-lose consciousness, and it's very competitive. I win, you lose. I'm okay, you're not okay. Or You win, I lose. Loser. You're okay, I'm not okay. Somebody wrote a book with all those, I'm okay, you're okay. Was it a fellow by the name of Dyer, I think, back in the day. When the heart's open, you're okay and I'm okay. And if you're not okay, I'm not okay, because I have empathy. We move together. We don't compete. There's not that rivalry. There's, instead of that rivalry, there's a cooperation. And there's beauty in everything shared. And things do not have their luster and value unless they can be shared. Sharing gives the thing, whatever is shared, a feeling, a thing, a meal, a project. It gives it a radiance. So when energy flows, we get that consciousness. If energy ebbs, there's the recession of that consciousness and the absence of that consciousness. And then competition can set in.
Competition.
Here, and whilst we're looking, there are endocrine glands associated with these etheric centers. And we mentioned the adrenals and the gonads. We know what they do. But the islets of Langerhans from the pancreas that produce the insulin, that give us our surge of energy. And this is the physical analog of solar plexus, feeling power and control, losing power and control. We need to be familiar with all of the centers and be able to balance them so that we can assume control when we need to. We can surrender control, give it to somebody else when we need to. Up in the region of the heart is some immune tissue, the thymus gland. And like other immune tissue in the body, or the immune system as a whole, its role is to identify what is self and what is not self. Because the body at a cellular level mounts an immune response to what it identifies as a foreign body. And part of that immune response is to produce antibodies that can attack that foreign body, to protect self and expel the not self, the alien. Now, the higher octave equivalent of this is to do with how polarized the consciousness is. What do I mean by that? If your consciousness is always polarized, you're always at competitive loggerheads, protecting your own position and trying to degrade the opponent's position.
I hate that.
Right? That's the not self. Yeah.
I don't like it.
Now, psyche and soma can compensate for each other. I think you were mentioning the other day, Belinda, that they've noticed some sort of inverse correlation with schizophrenia and cancer.
Absolutely, yeah.
It would seem that in older patients developing schizophrenia, there's a lower incidence of cancer of different types.
Absolutely. Actually, no incidence of cancer.
I don't know about that.
Not lower.
The research I looked
None.
at said that there was much reduced incidence. And it has to be qualified because when young people get schizophrenia, they'll get the same incidence of cancer and so on, but it's in the older people. The reason I bring it up is because let's say you have a problem you spend all your life resisting embracing, knowing about non-polarized heart energy. Love, basically. Then it may lead to derangements in your immune system, because the immune system is the microcosmic analog at a cellular level of the ability to know exactly where to draw that line between self and not self, self and other. It's subtle, but I think you can follow it. What I'm trying to say is the love energy from the heart, which is basically non-polarized, it's not a win-lose energy, nevertheless doesn't lose sight of me and you. It's aware of the dualism in a cooperative embrace. It doesn't confuse what's mine with what's yours. And let's say I have a problem with something and you're empathetic and you want to help me, you may completely put yourself at my service and empathize and help me, yet you do not lose the capacity to know what belongs to me and what belongs to you in this situation. Do you know what I mean? Mm. Some people lose their capacity. They go to help and then they forget where their boundary is. They don't know their boundary. And then the next thing, they're completely drained of energy.
They throw themselves at it, yeah.
Right?
I've done that.
But it's an art to be able to be there for another, to help them transmute their energies into something more life-giving or productive, but not to be taken down yourself and not to lose that boundary.
It's hard
right.
Sometimes, because usually when people reach out, they're at a pretty desperate state.
Mm. But it is a fine discrimination, not to be so closed off that you can't, open and empathize, and yet not be so open that you lose sight of the boundary. Now imagine if your immune system was similarly confused. Or imagine if your immune system, which is meant to identify what's you and what's not you, you follow? Imagine if we're compensating for your inability to get this balance right, to get the boundary right. Not be too close, to be able to be open and be available, but not to lose sight of the boundary. Imagine if the immune system compensated for that, because there's a connection between that place in consciousness.
And that's when you feel run down and unwell.
The endocrine and nervous system at that point there. Yeah, that's
so
where
it's linked up with your physical health.
Yeah.
Very much so, yeah.
So our ability to love is very linked up to our physical health and particularly impactful of the immune system, I believe.
I know, because I suffer it.
Mm-hmm. And very often, when your immunity takes a hit, you get run down.
Oh, yeah.
And you'll get colds and flus and things like that.
You pick up everything that's around, unfortunately.
And you don't have to, but I'm interested in tracing whether there are any precursors to that drop in immunity in my relationships. Am I getting my boundary right? Am I getting my empathy right? How am I going with that non-polarized heart consciousness, heart-centered consciousness?
But if it's to do with the heart, it's not all that rational sometimes. You can't.
Well, then it may be to do with the physical heart too, because there's a nerve plexus there as well. And let's say your discovery of what love is comes in fits and spurts and sporadically. That may affect the rhythm.
It's impulsive. In a way, it is impulsive.
Yeah, but let's say you're discovering it for the first time.
Ooh.
And it comes and it goes and it ebbs and it flows. And if it's a bit erratic, it may lead to disturbances of the rhythm of the physical heart.
Oh my God.
You know how you can get atrial fibrillation or tachycardia, or where the heart is not steady but is jumping around a bit. And people in the spiritual healing field need to be aware of that, because one doesn't necessarily automatically run to the solution of a pacemaker, because it may be a phase that the person is going through with the opening of their heart center. And then with the blue, symbolically blue thyroid, well, this is the voice box here, isn't it? Where the thyroid gland sits on the laryngeal area, the voice box area. The significance of that is in the word is formed. We form our thoughts, but in order to communicate our thoughts, we need language. And in order to push that language out into the world, we need the voice box. And that this is the part, the center in our body that is doing that. Yes, of course, there are signals sent from the brain and elsewhere, but this is the organ that actually will affect the sound that rides on the waves of air molecules. From my voice box to your ear, or your voice box to my ear. So this throat center is concerned with human creativity, to be able to form the thoughts and the thought forms underpinning all of our creativity, cultural creativity, inventiveness, thinking, philosophizing, arguments, and so on. And it's through this center that we receive that energy. And sometimes that energy flows and sometimes it ebbs. And when it flows, we're able to formulate those thoughts and express our minds.
It's amazing.
And when it doesn't, that original thinking just seems to fall by the wayside. We can repeat strung together stale phrases from somewhere else, but we can't generate. You know what I'm saying?
Can't create, you can only copy.
Yeah. Think of it this way, and this brings in the idea of the sort of reciprocity of the centers, in a way. Through the sex center comes energy which leads to the creation of the children of our loins, offspring. From the throat center comes the energy which leads to the creation of the children of our intellects, of our minds.
Brainchild.
The brainchild.
That's right.
Exactly. And there needs to be a unobstructed circulation, in the sense that the libido, the sexual energy, can be sublimated. It doesn't have to be expressed through that center, it can be expressed through this center. Also, the energy of the solar plexus can be sublimated and expressed through the heart center. Otherwise, you slip back down into that competitiveness.
That happens with age anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Different stages of life.
Yeah.
Different purposes.
It does happen with age, in the sense that these centers are active, the centers below the diaphragm, as they say, the base, the sex, and the solar plexus centers are activated first in human development.
It's more kind of
and then with maturity come those other centers, the heart, the throat, the brow, and the crown. But if we're just stuck, and the problem, I think, for the majority of human beings is being stuck beneath the diaphragm.
Yeah.
And the energy is stuck there and often frustrated, and it's not reaching its higher forms of expression.
That's right.
So we're not unfolding.
Yeah.
Yeah?
That's right.
We're either reacting from fear and greed and lust, and the lust for power and sexual perversion and so on. And our full human potential is not unfolded.
You'll lose it, yeah.
Yeah.
And then you've got people that become monks and nuns, and they go straight into the head centre.
Yes.
They don't even bother with the lower parts of the body.
Well, those people that are leading the religious lives of monks and nuns and so on, sannyasins and sadhus and bhikkhus, they are trying to quieten down these sub-diaphragmatic centres and function through these other ones. The historical ideal of the holy person has a lot to do with their, in a sense, disinterest in the lower centres and their occupation with the higher centres.
That's what I've noticed.
And that's why in iconography you see the halo around the saint. It's at the top of the head. It's not around the whole body, it's around the top of the head.
Don't we have an angel? We're supposed to have some sort of angelic force sitting at the top of our head as well?
Yeah. Well, I'm not placing a value judgment on these centres. I'm just saying that if we're interested in integral human development, we need to know how they all work and how they can work together in concert.
That's right.
And up here is the pituitary gland in the brow, and of course the etheric brow centre underlying it. The pituitary gland is the master gland of the endocrine system because it produces hormones which activate the hormones in the glands below. It's a regulator, a governor. Similarly, the brow centre brings through energies that have to do with the integration of the human personality. It is a command centre for the human personality. It's like the conductor of the orchestra. And as we develop as human beings, we can develop on different levels sequentially. It would be very unusual to develop on all levels at once, but you can think of examples of people that are just they're channeling so much energy into the physical. They might be exceptional sports people, and all of their energy is going into developing and training the physical body. A ballet dancer, a gymnast, a professional athlete or basketball player or something. Other people are living out an ambition which may be, extraordinary to see. Some people live their lives on the emotional level. They might be aesthetes, and it's all about how things make them feel. Others have crazy intellects, crazily developed, super brainy, but there mightn't be a lot of energy going into the other areas of life.
Common sense, yeah. I've seen a lot of that. Brilliant minds, but when it comes to just basic things, they can't get their head around it.
Yes, that can happen a lot. They're geniuses at what they do, but they may lack common sense.
Einstein was one. He used to forget to put his socks on.
Yes, he notoriously didn't change his socks, they say. Well, these are our different faculties are like instruments in an orchestra, and at some point they need to be able to play together for our integral development. And the command center that coordinates all this, that conducts all this,
Pineal,
is the brow. Now the pituitary gland, so we're not, the pineal is the top one, right? It's the top gland, and it exists in a little fossa of bone
in the scalp,
inside the skull. But because the pituitary, the one here between the eyes, is a two-lobed gland, so it's got a front part and a back part, an anterior and a posterior part. And like the anterior part, that's because it's got a dual specialization. They call it a two-petal lotus. The front part is the part that's like coordinating the rest of the body. It's got those hormones that go out and stimulate the other endocrine glands, regulate them. But the posterior part relates to the pineal. Part of the pituitary is looking down and part of it is looking up, because even if the human personality is integrated, the question can be asked, what does it serve? What am I here for? In fact, who am I? Why is this human personality given us? What are we meant to do with it? And that's why the back part of the pituitary communicates with the pineal and the hypothalamus and those areas of the brain interior. And the pineal, or the crown center, has to do with our consciousness of the infinite. Our concept of God, our awareness of the divine. And so the integral human being must be properly orientated towards the divine and have that good relationship with the divine. And how is this symbolized or externalized in the pineal gland? Well, we mentioned that the pineal gland regulates your diurnal rhythms or body clock, which revolves around levels of illumination responding to the amount of light. And that response results in the production of a hormone called melatonin. So sometimes they give melatonin to people that are insomniac. So the whole business of waking and sleeping and having a good sleep cycle and a good waking period can be affected because compensation can take place through the pineal for what's happening and any inadequacies in our orientation to the divine, to the transcendent and the infinite. Because we are finite, but to truly understand finitude, you must have some sense of what the infinite is as well. And this is where it comes from and makes sense here.
I don't know about the pineal gland, but I know that there are other glands in the body that get depleted over time.
Yeah.
Can we control that?
Well, remember there are two sorts of glands. There's the endocrine glands, which I've been talking about, which are special because they make their hormones, and those hormones are released straight into the blood system. And that's why the blood system transports them throughout the whole body. So these hormones can have generalized diffuse effects over the whole body. But the other type of gland is the exocrine gland, which secretes its product into a duct and then into a cavity from the duct. Like if you're looking at glands in the gut, or in the liver, or the parotid glands, or tear gland. I mean, tears are produced in a gland and then they're released in a duct and they come into the eye. Or saliva is produced in parotid glands.
All glands.
Yeah, but they come down a duct and shot into the mouth. They're not, the products of the parotid glands are not secreted into the bloodstream directly, as with the endocrine glands. So it's a bit of a different story.
I think what I was trying to find out is about hormones, because I know that the aging process is related to hormones as well.
Well, we're talking hormones.
Yeah. Glands and hormones.
The endocrine glands.
Sorry, I'm a bit ignorant in this area.
No, that's all right. The endocrine glands produce these hormones. And the hormones that we've been talking about today are adrenaline that come from the adrenal glands that give you your fight or flight response. We've been talking about testosterone and estrogen and progesterone,
all those,
which come from the gonads.
Yeah,
your sex hormones.
In a safe way to prevent aging,
But we need all those hormones. Imagine if you didn't have those hormones, you wouldn't go through puberty.
You'd be so sick.
Your body wouldn't develop. Just
too. If you didn't have them.
Oh yeah, you'd be sick without any of that. Your life would be threatened.
Mm.
But yeah, we haven't broken it down. But I'm just presuming that people can think this through for themselves. That without the estrogen and progesterone, there'd be no life on Earth, because these hormones produce ovulation and they produce the shedding of the uterus and.
Regardless of child production, I'm talking about what happens to you once those hormones get depleted, how the body starts to age and get sicker.
Yeah, but that's part of the body clock too, because the hormones change with menopause.
Yeah, and men have some
form of that as well. Because
cannot be changed.
Well, I mean,
in a safe way.
Modern medicine tries to affect these cycles artificially.
Cancer causing, you don't want to go there.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering whether you can do it through Just through meditation, through self-healing.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to follow those lines of inquiry, they're absolutely within the ken of holistic healing. You have to understand what those gonads that produce the sex hormones and are regulated by the pituitary to produce the sex hormones, which lead to the secondary sexual characteristics. Men get hair on their body and their voice breaks, and women get breasts and become curvaceous and are able to ovulate and bear children and so on. What is this symbolizing about consciousness, about your life force and your life energy? You've got to start asking this. Remember how we talked about the immune system and love? They seem to be incommensurable. One is a human quality of awareness, and one is a cellular activity. Well, the same thing is applying with the reproductive system. What is sex? You've got to go into the question, what is sex? What is sexual differentiation? What is sexual attraction? Is it part of a larger life force?
I think you've misunderstood what I said. I'm not looking at this thing from a sexual point of view. I'm looking at from an anti-aging point of view. How to stop the aging process. Or how to reverse it.
Yeah, well, that's a big subject. And we can't even start. How would you start?
I've got a feeling that it's linked to your hormones. Very much so.
I can think of some obvious examples, like there's going to be a fall off in testosterone with age, and so testosterone leads to more muscle mass.
That's right.
For example, so the limbs will become scrawnier and skinnier, and
it's like estrogen makes your skin soft.
Estrogen makes your skin soft, so you look like an older woman with less estrogen in your system.
That's right.
So yeah, very much so. Anyway, it's a big subject. People will just have to do their own research there. And I think that we've gone long enough, so we'll draw it to an end for today. And maybe next time we can talk about energy plunder and control dramas and how we seek energy in inappropriate ways and what to do about it.